In this lesson, we will learn about real-world DNS issues with domains configured for both internal and external uses. First, we will work on the steps to set up a domain for internal and external uses. Then we will go through the list of real-world issues and solutions. Finally, we sum up our lesson with the keynotes. To set up a domain for both external and internal uses, first the company must purchase a public domain with a vendor. For example, itlifeskills.com with GoDaddy, and the GoDaddy DNS server becomes the authoritative DNS server of the domain itlifeskills.com over the internet. Then on an internal DNS server, create an AD integrated zone for the domain itlifeskills.com. The internal DNS server becomes the authoritative DNS server for the zone itlifeskills.com within the company network. To publish an application to the internet, first, on an internal DNS server, the systems team must add a DNS record to point to the private IP address of the application. For example, training.itlifeskills.com pointing to 10.0.0.100, which is the private IP address of the training server. Then the systems team will provide the private IP address of the application, and their associated ports need to open for external access to the networking team. For example, allow access to 10.0.0.100 on port 443, which is HTTPS. To allow external access to an internal application, the networking team configures NAT on the firewall to map a public IP address to a private IP address of the application and allows only external access on the required ports for the application. For example, they configure the NAT rule to map 3.33.152.147 map to 10.0.0.100 and allows access only on port 443, which means the external clients, when accessing this public IP address, can only get through the firewall on port 443. The networking team then provides the public IP address to the system team. Then on the public DNS server, the systems team asks a DNS record to point to the public IP address provided by the networking team. For example, training.itlifeskills.com pointing to 3.33.152.147. Now, when the setup is done, internal clients contact the internal DNS server for the private IP address of the training server and access training.itlifeskills.com directly. External clients or internal mobile clients that move out of the corporate network must contact the public DNS server and get the public IP address of training.itlifeskills.com and access the training server via the firewall. This setup applies to all on-prem applications public to the internet. The first issue that we may experience with this setup is that the external clients cannot access the application. To troubleshoot this issue, we first need to check if the DNS records has been added to the public DNS server. If the external clients cannot resolve DNS name to the public IP address, then they cannot access the application. To verify if the public DNS records exist, we can use a public DNS lookup tool such as MX2Box at this link. As you can see, we created training.itlifeskills.com on the internal DNS server, which points to the private IP address of the training server, which means the internal clients can now access the training website directly. To allow external clients to access the training website, we need to go into our public DNS server, which is godaddy.com, and add a new record for itlifeskills.com domain. To do that, we click on add new records and we choose a type as a records, and the name we type in training, and the public IP address is 3.33.152.147, and we click on the save button. As you can see, the training.itlifeskills.com public DNS records has been created on godaddy.com DNS server, and it points to the public IP address of the training server assigned by the networking team. To verify if the DNS records training.itlifeskills.com exists on the internet, we can go to the DNS lookup tool mx2box.com and type in the DNS records training.itlifeskills.com, then click on DNS lookup. As you can see, we see that the A records for training.itlifeskills.com pointing to the public IP address 3.33.152.147. Everything looks good. Now that we were able to verify the DNS records has been created on the public DNS server, the next step is to check if the firewall has been configured and opened on the correct port. To verify from an external client, we can telnet to the DNS name training.itlifeskills.com and specify the port number. Now to verify, we need to install telnet client on an external computer and open command prompt and type in the command telnet space training.itlifeskills.com, then space, then specify the port 443, then hit enter. Now, if the firewall has not been configured and open on the port 443, we will see this message connecting to training.itlifeskills.com and could not open connection to the host on the port 443, connect failed. So if we see this message, we need to bring that up to the networking team so that they can check it for us. When the networking team confirms that the firewall has been configured to allow access on the public IP address of training.itlifeskills.com on port 443, we can redo the test again, and the connection should look like this. This means it is connected. Now, external clients can access the changing websites. Another issue with this setup happens when many companies host their public websites externally for high reliability. So instead of hosting the public website on an internal server, they host it on an external server with a vendor, and the vendor provides the public IP address of their server, and they create the DNS records for the public website to point to the public IP address of the server provided by the vendor. After that, the external clients can access the public website without an issue, while the internal clients cannot. So the solution is to add the DNS records for the public website to point to the public IP address of the server provided by the vendor to the internal DNS server. The last issue with this setup, and usually happen to big companies. If you worked for a small company, you may not experience this issue. So during the COVID-19 time, we got a call from the DNS vendor, GoDaddy, informing us that our DNS queries for itlifeskills.com domain increased dramatically from 1 million per day to 10 millions per day. It sounded like good news since more users are interested in our services. However, it also meant GoDaddy would charge us more due to the significantly high query traffic to their DNS servers. This indicated an issue rather than the good news because our customers was not significantly increased during that time. To troubleshoot the issue, the first thing we looked at is the time to live. As you know, in this case, the GoDaddy is the authoritative DNS server of the domain itlifeskills.com because it owns that domain. And the time to live is to specify the amount of time the non-authoritative DNS server such as AT&T, Verizon, or Google need to check back with the authoritative DNS server for an update about the record. So when we first set up the public DNS records, we usually specify the time to live value to 30 minutes so it can get updated from the non-authoritative DNS server quickly. However, we knew that the value for the DNS records didn't get changed often. So to avoid millions of non-authoritative DNS server to query GoDaddy for an update about our DNS records in the itlifeskills.com domain, we changed the time to live from 30 minutes to a day. However, it didn't fix the issue. By using the advanced DNS analysis tool provided by GoDaddy, we found 90% of the queries was for NX domain. So NX domain stands for a non-existent domain. It represents an error DNS message received by the clients when the requested domain cannot be resolved to an IP address. An NX domain error message simply indicates that the domains or the DNS records being queried do not exist. So the NX domain gave us a clue to check our DNS configurations for itlifeskills.com domain. And we found that on the GoDaddy DNS server, we have 100 DNS records created in itlifeskills.com domain for public uses. And on the internal DNS server, we have thousands of records created in itlifeskills.com domain for internal uses. So the difference between the DNS records in itlifeskills.com domain on internal DNS servers and the external DNS server will cause the NX domain issue when the internal clients move to work from home out of the corporate office network without VPN. Especially, we found the records for update.itlifeskills.com used by over 12,000 of internal client agents to check for new trainings, which is scheduled to run every 30 minutes, is the main cause for this issue. To solve this problem, the management decision was to force VPN on mobile clients that are outside of the corporate office network and to remove the update agents for non-VPN mobile clients to stop checking for new changing updates. This is the end of this lesson. Let's read the keynotes.